This is a Presta valve. It's the most common valve you find on bicycle tires these days. Now there is another one. This one is Schrader. Might look a little bit more familiar to you because it's the kind of valve that you normally find on a car tire. A little bit fatter. Not quite as sexy looking as a Presta valve. But a lot of people have trouble figuring out Presta valves and how they really work, especially when it comes to putting air in them. It's pretty simple. This is just a little dust cap that goes on the end. Comes off like that. And then there's a little brass cap here that also unscrews. So before you can put any air in this tire, you got to make sure that that's unscrewed. Otherwise nothing can come out. And here's another little trick. After you've unscrewed it, press it in a little bit. Hear the air coming out of the tire. If your tire was really flat, you probably wouldn't hear that. But sometimes what happens is if you don't do that, this little thing just kind of gets stuck out there. And you're pumping away and it just doesn't seem to want to accept any air. This helps the air that's coming in from the pump push that into place a little bit. Other things you might notice about this are that this whole length of this valve happens to be threaded. And down here at the end is a little lock nut that comes off the whole thing. All this really does is just keep the inner tube in place. Now there's some people who think that this isn't such a hot idea, so they don't even bother to thread this and they don't include this little nut. They think it's better if the tube can just kind of move around a little bit in response to what's going on, that makes it less likely that you're going to get a flat caused by some sort of rubbing of the inner tube in here. I've used both kinds. I don't know if it really applies or not, if it's really true, but if you ever see one that's totally bare of threads and doesn't have the little lock nut, don't worry about it. It's perfectly all right. The one thing they all will have in common is this little brass threaded piece up here. Next thing we want to look at is actually inflating this when you have to. Okay, here's the end of the bike pump here. Most of them these days have two holes in them. One is smaller diameter for the Presta valve, the other is larger for the Schrader valve. So to use this, make sure that this is undone, and then just take this, put it on, move this lever out to make sure the whole thing's attached, and then just start pumping away until you get it up to the desired pressure. When you get it to the desired pressure, you're just going to do everything reverse. Take this off, move that out, screw this back on. Look for the dust cap that you probably lost on the ground somewhere, like I have. Oh, here it is. Find the dust cap, put it back on, and you're off and running. Now, one thing about these pumps, I talked about how pumps these days usually have two different openings on them depending on the size. There are also pumps that are made, they're called smart pumps, smart heads. They only have one hole and they figure out whether you're using Presta or Schrader. If you've got a really old pump that only has one opening, chances are it's not a smart head. So go to your dealer and get a new pump. And one other tip about pumps, before you buy a pump at your dealer, ask the dealer if you can try to inflate a tire with it. Some are incredibly easy to pump, others are incredibly hard. And if you're a lightweight like me, weighing about 100 pounds, you can stand on your head sometimes trying to get 100 pounds of air into one of these tires. So try before you buy with pumps. And remember, Presta, just undo this, undo that, pop a little air, put the pump on. When you're done, screw that back in place, put your dust cap back on, and hit the road.